Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about a 3rd edition book, The Wise and Wicked, from Sword and Sorcery Studio, for the Scarred Lands campaign setting. Now, I've actually reviewed Scarred Lands material in the past, and I'm probably going to review some more in the future. And I think it's a pretty decent setting. But I think that this particular book has more application than just the specific campaign it's designed for. This book is a collection of non-player characters. Casters, martial classes, divine, arcane, mixed, people with multiple different classes, some PRCs, different races. So it's a really nice collection of non-player characters, because non-player characters that have any kind of a depth can be a nightmare for a GM to have to come up with. It's just not that easy to do. Each one has a multiple page write-up, so it's got lots of fluff to play with. It's got a full stat block, including all the spells that they normally have for the casters. Obviously, the martial NPCs are going to have a smaller entry than the casters will. And any GM worth his salt could easily use any of these NPCs multiple times. You change the race, you change the name, you move the age bracket back and forth, you know what I mean? And if you're just using the stat blocks, you could use them a dozen times, you know what I mean? And your players would never be aware that you're doing it. Because, again, a GM all has to do is finagle a few things here and there. Just having those stat blocks already worked up is going to be so handy. And it's not just non-player characters in this book. There are also some unique magic items, unique spells, and actually a couple of unique minor artifacts. And these run the full gamut from mid-level characters, the 5 to 8 level range, all the way up to, there's one person in here who's got like 25 or more levels in something or other, an epic character with a minor artifact, and really powerful spellcaster. And the one thing I have to say, though, is that because it's designed for the Scarred Lands setting, because of that, they use some very specific material from that campaign setting. And I think that detracts from its ability to be used generically by other people. There are a number of races in here which they just state, this person is, race X. But it's not part of the core rules, and if you don't have any of the Scarred Lands books, you're going to be guessing. You can, get a gander from the image or from the description what kind of race it is. Okay, it's vaguely, rodent-like, small race kind of thing. But you're not going to have the actual stat blocks for the race. Now, there's some dead space in this book, not a huge amount, but at the end of a number of the entries, there's some white space because the entry ended before the page was filled. And I think if they had re-edited, they would have had enough space. They could have put a thumbnail stat block for the races that are non-standard. And I think that would have made this a much more useful book. There's also, I think, a couple of NPCs in here that have references to classes which are not standard, like a multi-class into a different class, or a prerequisite prestige class that isn't standard. And again, it's part of the Scarred Lands setting, but it's not part of the core book. Now that would have been much more difficult to add information to, but I think they could have better served people by just using more generic prestige classes. They're out there. There's a lot of them. So it wouldn't have been difficult to use. Just the ones from the SRD would have sufficed for this particular book. But it's a decent sized book. I'll go on Amazon and see if I can figure out how much the copy's going for. I got this copy for $8 at a gaming store over in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So I was kind of happy about that. And having non-player characters around can really save your bacon when you find yourself suddenly needing a mid-level caster and you don't have one ready. This kind of thing can really be helpful to a GM. And even as a player, I think it can be helpful because it can really show a person how a character that may be what you want to be was developed, and this feat selection and spell selection and things like that. So I think that players might find some use out of this as well.